Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Murder Tapes podcast, episode 6. That is actually crazy. It feels like yesterday was episode 1. But, anyways, I hope you all had a great Christmas break. I've had the worst sore throat. You can probably hear it in my voice. My nose is very stuffy and it won't go away. I've tried everything, so I'm kind of sad about that because it's been going on for a week now and it's just been hard to do a lot of things. But I got to go see my family in Houston for Christmas, which was really nice. I also got to have a couple nights off, which is also nice because, as y'all know, I work overnight in a lab, so I usually don't ever get sleep, and so it was nice to sleep in. Aside from that, I have some really fun news because one of my closest friends, Alexis, shout out Alexis, I love you so much, she got me and Wilson free tickets to the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans for New Year's, so we are so excited. We wanted to get tickets initially, but they were just so expensive. It was insane. I have so many friends that are so jealous and sad that they can't go, and I feel horrible, but I literally cannot wait. Prepare to be sick of me. But thank you so much, Alexis, once again. We love you so much, and I cannot wait to spend time with you in New Orleans. And I also wanted to give a quick shout out to my friend and listener, Natalia, because she's always supporting the podcast and posting our newest episode. And so I just really appreciate it. And I also really appreciate all of the love and support you guys have given me as well. So today we're going to be discussing the Angela Samota case. And I remember hearing about this case a couple of years ago. And I was terrified because I'm also a college student in a sorority living in Texas. I also love going out with my friends. And I usually pick everyone up and drop them off just like she did, which I think a lot of college students do. But either way, I just felt a strong connection to this case. Angela Marie Samota was born September 19, 1964 in Alameda, California. She attended Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas, and studied computer science and electrical engineering. She was also in the Zeta Tau Alpha sorority and was the social chairman. She was described by others as being hardworking and bubbly. You can see this in the photos of her that will be linked in the show notes along with other evidence. I'm telling you, in these photos, she literally looks like the sweetest girl, one that I could easily see myself being friends with. After roommating her freshman year with her best friend, Sheila Wasaki, a girl she met the first day of college, her parents decided to buy her a condo off campus. She loved being able to live on her own and the responsibility that came with it, but soon she decided that she wanted her best friend to move in also. Not too long after her move, she met and fell in love with Ben McCall. He was a construction crew manager and they began dating. Their schedules were very different, but they made time to see each other regardless of their busy lives. Not too long after, she met Russell Buchanan and Anita Kadala at a networking event through their college. They would do things as a friend group every now and then, but they didn't know each other too well. They did, however, have lots of mutual friends. On the night of October 12th, 1984, 18-year-old Angelina Samota decided to go out with Anita and Russell. Her boyfriend, Ben McCall, would later report to the police that he wanted to go with them, but he worked in construction and had an early morning job. She and her friends decided to go to the state fair and then went to the Rio Room dance club and stayed there past midnight. According to her friends, while they were there, she talked to lots of different people and went to different tables to converse. Angela then drove her friends home and stopped by her boyfriend's apartment before returning to her condo. At around 1:45, Angela made a phone call to her boyfriend. He could tell by the tone of her voice that she was scared when she told him a man was at her apartment and asked if he could use her phone and the restroom. He wasn't able to ask if the man was already there when she arrived home or if he knocked and asked her to be let in. All she would say to her boyfriend was, "Talk to me, and I'll call you right back," before quickly hanging up. Unfortunately, that would be the last phone call Angela would make. Her boyfriend decided to drive over to her condo in order to check in on her, but when he knocked on the door, there was no answer. He also tried to open it, but it was locked. He quickly called the police from his truck, and they arrived at 2:17 a.m. They immediately broke the door to enter her condo. They found her lying on her bed, naked and covered in blood, next to her giant stuffed rabbit. She had been raped, assaulted, and stabbed repeatedly over 18 times. Her eyes were wide open and her legs were hanging off the bed. Her cause of death was due to multiple stab wounds to her heart. The crime scene was so gruesome that first responders later stated that Angela's murder has always stuck with them. One officer in particular, Janie Crother, who was just 20 years old at the time, nearly the same age as Angela, would testify in court that Angela's blue eyes would haunt her. She said, quote, "From that day to this one, I close my eyes and see Angela." As for the evidence, her shower appeared to have been used, indicating that the perpetrator tried to clean themselves after the crime. There was DNA collected from the blood and rape kit, but unfortunately, because this occurred in 1984, it would take years to solve her murder, and one man would be wrongfully accused of her murder. Aside from the fact that DNA wasn't as advanced as it is now, her case was also being neglected by police because they were set on who they thought did it, but her best friend decided to take things into her own hands. Angela's ex and current boyfriend were the first suspects, but they were ruled out quickly. The prime suspect was Russell Buchanan, one of the friends she went out with that night. He was an architect and about 4 or 5 years older than her. The only problem was that there was no DNA evidence linking him to the crime. Russell would tell police after they dropped him off at home, he went straight to sleep because he had to attend a wedding and then get on a flight to Houston in order to visit his family. He was more than happy to be interviewed by police and offered all of his help, but unfortunately, when police asked if they could search his apartment, they found lots of knives and other sharp objects, but these were not his. In fact, his roommate had just come back from a safari in Africa and bought these pieces as souvenirs. Following the search, police asked him to go to the station for further questioning, and just like all the other times, he agreed to. When he arrived, officers began treating him differently. They pulled their guns on him when he entered, and this is when they were set on the idea that he was the killer. They harassed him anytime he was out and would demand that he go back to the station for more questioning. They showed up at his office, they waited at his house, they weren't going to let this go. He would later agree to a polygraph test, but they still didn't believe he was innocent, even after passing it. Police even went as far as showing him gruesome crime scene photos and demanding he confess. They said to him, quote, "She dropped you off. You were mad because you wanted to have sex with her. You went down to her apartment, she let you in, you had sex with her, she started to scream, you stabbed her, and you stabbed her, and stabbed her, and stabbed her 18 times, end quote. He would think back to this time in his life and say he doesn't know how he got through it. He was only 23 years old. He didn't have legal representation until later on, and he didn't know how interrogations worked. He hadn't ever even been in a police station. He would be put under 24-hour surveillance, and they knew everything about him, including when he would be leaving for grad school, and they assumed that he was fleeing the country. Angela's best friend Sheila initially told police that she wasn't sure about him and that he made her uncomfortable. But she would later testify that everyone made her uncomfortable during this time because she didn't know who could do something so gruesome. In reality, Russell was a shy guy. Angela wanted to be friends with him because she thought that he could be a good connection for her career, and often invited him out. Sheila decided to take things a step further and gathered with investigators. She decided to wear a wire and go to dinner with Russell to see if she could catch him in a lie. She recounts how angry her mom was when she told her that she was going to dinner with a potential killer, but she felt it needed to be done. He picked her up and they went to a place called August Moon. While in the car, she would think to herself that she was sitting next to a man that killed her best friend simply because police thought he did. However, his story stayed the same and nothing was off about their conversations. Unfortunately, police still didn't believe he was innocent and continued to pursue legal action. This would lead him to finally get a lawyer. Sheila would later say when she heard that he got a lawyer, she automatically assumed that he was for sure guilty. In the 80s, there was a Texan lawyer called Richard Racehorse Haynes, and anyone that hired him was definitely guilty. However, there was no DNA evidence, meaning he couldn't be charged with anything. He remained in London, where he finished grad school and built models for Frank Gehry a Canadian architect and designer in Los Angeles, before returning to Dallas to resume his career. He got married to his wife Karen in the early 90s and explained to her that he was wrongfully accused. She always believed him. In 2004, her best friend Sheila had since moved to Tennessee and had 2 sons. After Angela's murder, she didn't return to college. Angela's death was so traumatic that she would sleep on her mom's floor and just think about who could have done this and why. One night, while she was doing her Bible study homework, Angela appeared in her room. Although Angela didn't speak, she felt that she was telling her to get her case reopened so that it could be solved after all of these years. I'm going to play audio of her describing this moment.
I was leaning back doing this first night of homework. I remember leaning on the pillow and I looked to the right and there's Angie. I thought to myself, am I dreaming? Am I asleep? What is it? And it was no talking, no nothing. It was just her and her great smile.
When you say there's Angie and it was her, how real did this vision seem?
I can still see it today. I mean, it was as real as the microphone is in front of me. I mean, I saw her now. Was I half asleep, half awake? I don't know, but I know what I saw.
Do you believe in ghosts?
Do I believe in ghosts? Like Casper type? No. I have a lot of faith. I believe there are messages. Absolutely, I believe that. I didn't think to myself, is this real? The first thought was, it's time. That's the first thing that ran through my mind. It was quick and it was very precise of what I needed to do.
Did you even know what you meant?
Oh, I knew exactly what I meant because I leaned over to my nightstand and picked up the phone and called the Dallas Police Department.
Sheila didn't get very far with that call, so she called again and again. How many times did you call?
Oh, I'd have to call and leave a message. And so I'd call and leave a message, not get anything back. And over a period of time, it was probably anywhere, at least 700 calls, but maybe more or a little bit less, but not too much more.
700 times you called that police station?
I know. And they blew me off. I think initially they thought I'd go away and get tired. But first of all, I was told that they didn't have the evidence. When I was initially told that the evidence was lost in a flood and they didn't have it anymore, most normal people would drop it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't. So I kept calling.
Why?
I don't know. I don't know. There was something about it just didn't feel right, and I just didn't take no. I just knew I was supposed to do it.
After this encounter, she would call the police department and ask to speak to the cold case division, which led them to try and connect her to the homicide division, as there was no cold case division at the time. She asked for the detective that she often tried to talk to many times, and though he didn't answer, she left messages. According to Sheila, the detective never returned her phone calls. She called over 700 times and said the guy knew her so well she could invite him to her wedding, but he always blew her off. She grew more and more bitter because of this. She was heartbroken that no one else cared about the death of her best friend. The police would tell her that no one else had called in regards to the case but her in the last 20 years. This led her to keep reminding police to continue to do all that they could. She also began her own research. She began printing out police reports that were similar, including rape and assault cases that occurred around the same time frame. The coolest part of it all is that she would later become a private investigator after speaking with a police officer that guarded her gated community. He told her that she'd be a great investigator, and without thinking about it, she decided to become one in her early 40s. In order to become a private investigator in Tennessee, you have to be sponsored by a company. Luckily, the security guys she knew said they'd sponsor her and train her. One night, after having dinner with her oldest son, she had him read her all the Tennessee laws, and she would recite them back. She learned about cyberbullying, copyright law on the internet, and cheating spouses, and then passed her exam. Although she had a private investigator license, police still ignored her, but after some time, they decided to reopen the case. As for the DNA evidence collected at the scene, she was told it was lost in a flood, but upon her asking about the rape kit, fingernails, and semen collected, they had it. During this time, DNA testing was more advanced, but it did still take longer than it would now. They had to put in a request in 2008 and didn't get the results until 2009. She got a call from lead detective Linda Crum and confidently said, "We got him." Sheila would admit that she was waiting to be told it was Russell, but she said it was Donald Andrew Bess. For 23 years, she assumed it was Russell. Her and the rest of the world blamed him for so long that they fully believed it. Russell also got a call, and he was also very stunned that it was finally solved. Donald Andrew Bess was now 60 years old and weighed 350 pounds. He was a twice convicted rapist currently serving a life sentence at a state prison in Huntsville. The theory was that while he was out on parole in 1984, he may have become fixated on Angela after spotting her at the bar with her friends. Her friends would mention that her beauty often attracted lots of people. She would even get love notes from random people. They believe he then followed her home. They also believed that he stabbed her when her boyfriend came back to check in on her in order to silence her. When her boyfriend went back to his truck in order to contact police, they believed he finished the crime. Imagine how haunting that must be for her boyfriend to learn. While he was knocking at her door, she was potentially being murdered. He probably feels guilty that he didn't kick the door open and save her. It's important that Russell's name was finally clear and Angela's killer was caught. He was given a formal apology by a sergeant. Although this haunted his life, he didn't have any bitterness towards police. He would later say, quote, "It wasn't their fault. If that was your daughter that had been killed, wouldn't you want the police department to use whatever means necessary to find the truth? I would. As far as I'm concerned, the Dallas Police Department does not owe me an apology. They never did. I'm grateful for the work and service they did. That's it, period." And honestly, what a great statement. He testified against her killer at his capital murder trial in June of 2010. Donald Andrew Bess was found guilty and sentenced to death for the murder of Angela Samota. While on death row, on October 8, 2022, he died of a heart attack. After the trial, Russell would say, quote, "You don't realize how stressful it is until it's over, and then you're just physically, mentally, and emotionally exhausted. That's when I think I finally realized that it was done, that this chapter had finally been closed." Not too long after, Sheila would reunite with Russell on NBC's Dateline. She would say, quote, "I need your forgiveness," she told him and his wife at his office. She then explained she had done everything to try and convict him and was stunned by what he had to say. He said, "You were just doing what you thought was right for your friend." He even thanked her for her persistence. After all, it is what helped him get his name cleared. After this interview, they remained great friends. Sheila continued to do private investigative work and even founded a nonprofit called Without Warning. It is meant to educate women about self-defense and rape prevention. I'd like to take some time to highlight Angela and all the amazing things about her. Her best friend Sheila remembers her by her beautiful smile. She said it was the biggest smile she'd ever seen, the type of smile that would light up her whole face. She was known for being friendly and one of the few girls in the computer science and electrical engineering department. Not only was she gorgeous, but she was also very smart and had a great personality. Something that made me happy to know is that she was buried with her mom. It's so amazing to me that her best friend helped solve her murder. Most people would have given up or left it to the police, but she fought, and I know Angela will forever be grateful for her best friend. This case is so heartbreaking, but at least her family got some sense of justice. As always, everything will be linked in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening. Feel free to follow the show's Instagram at Murder Tapes Podcast or my personal Instagram at Annalisa. Don't forget to also follow the show if you enjoyed and leave a review. I hope to see you on the next one.